In the past month, fighting between Chinese and Indian soldiers on disputed Western Himalayan borders left 20 Indian soldiers dead, 20 seriously injured, and an unknown number of Chinese casualties.
This is Globe Z, and this is part 2 of China India Standoff Explained.
The conflict was triggered by roads built near the border and possibly dams. The clash on the night of June 15 and 16 marked the first time that soldiers have died in combat between China and India in the past 45 years. China, India, and Pakistan have been arguing over the Western Himalaya region for over 70 years. During this time, thousands of soldiers have died and significant damage has been done to the fragile environment, including the glaciers that sit at the headwaters of the Indus, Brahmaputra, and Tarim river basins. The simplest explanation, perhaps, is that China is responding to India's efforts to bolster border area infrastructure in Ladakh after the completion of the DSTBO road. After India's move into Doklam in 2017, China is perhaps especially sensitive to Indian activity along the disputed border, around Galwan in particular. China may be seeking to preempt an Indian effort to improve its links to the LAC. Thus, it has taken over Galwan Valley. There has not been independent reporting from either side. Instead, media in the two countries is largely reporting state propaganda, as usually happens with such border run-ins, calling the other side the aggressor. In this context, it is interesting to note that India under Prime Minister Narendra Modi has alienated more than one of its neighbors. Besides China and Pakistan, Nepal and Bhutan also have recent complaints over their borders with India. Thus, China's move can also be deciphered as a response to India's expansionist ideology that India has been propagating under Prime Minister Modi. Now, coming to the question of Kashmir, I believe the root cause of China's move along the line of actual control is actually Kashmir. India removed the region's special status on August 5, 2019, bringing disputed parts of Kashmir directly under New Delhi's control as two separate union territories. In doing so, India overlooked international and regional reservations as well the United Nations resolutions on the Kashmir dispute. The move put Pakistan on standby, and there were even suspicions of a planned Indian military intrusion inside Pakistan-administered Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. But India had other plans. It wanted to confront China, the emerging power in the region. New Delhi constructed roads and bridges in Galwan Valley at the disputed Sino-Indian border in Ladakh. Indeed, the Ladakh standoff can be understood through the issue of Kashmir, one of many questions left unresolved by the British after their departure from South Asia. Pakistan and India have fought most of the wars over Kashmir's status. Parts of the Kashmir region are controlled and administered by China too, including in Ladakh. Now, overlapping claims in Ladakh have brought China and India to a deadly standoff. Azad Jammu and Kashmir's president Sardar Masood Khan has rightly said that the China-India clash in Ladakh was not the real issue. Instead, the Kashmir conflict is the root cause of all the problems in the region. The question of Kashmir has always strained relations between India and Pakistan from the very beginning. Now it is undermining ties between China and India. India claims Kashmir in its entirety and does not want any external mediation over the issue, not even from the United States, its ally in the region. Pakistan, however, calls Kashmir a disputed territory and has encouraged international intervention. Now the Chinese and Indian standoff at Ladakh gives credence to Pakistan's claim that Kashmir is indeed disputed. In a sense, however, the Ladakh standoff is precisely the result of Indian nationalism against China. India's defeat at the hands of the Chinese in 1962 is still fresh in Indian mind, and the build-up in infrastructure along the disputed border was likely an attempt to prevent another embarrassing loss. As more evidence that Kashmir is linked to all the developments in the region, veteran Pakistani columnist Irfan Hussain gives an interesting account of Pakistan and the Kashmir factor in the 1962 war between China and India. As the fighting was at its height, and India had sent most of its mountain divisions from Kashmir to the war zone, the Chinese ambassador in Islamabad called on General Ayub Khan, the then military ruler of Pakistan, to ask why Pakistan had not taken advantage of the situation to seize Kashmir. Ayub passed on the information to the American and British ambassadors, who sought urgent instructions from Washington and London. They returned the following day begging Ayub to do nothing and promising that after the fighting had ceased, their governments would pressure Indian Prime Minister Nehru into holding the UN-mandated vote in Kashmir. Ayub and his inner circle thought it would be in Pakistan's interest to follow the UN route rather than fight a war. But unfortunately, despite the promise, the UN has remained silent over the Kashmir issue. This is evidence enough that Kashmir is the integral issue and is linked to the recent India and China debacle. Now we will analyze the Indian response in this context. In India, Modi has been facing increasing domestic pressure over the loss of the Indian soldiers. Modi has taken a soft tone on the border clashes with China, quite unlike his usual approach to Pakistan. Traditionally, India has bashed Pakistan over tensions on the line of control in the same Kashmir region. This has too increased anti-Pakistani sentiments in India, and ultra-Hindu nationalists have started holding responsible Pakistan for all their problems. Ahead of his re-election campaign in India, Modi's anti-Pakistan rhetoric doubled up, publicly threatening Pakistan during his rallies. As a result, the Hindu nationalists became used to his strident nationalism, and they expected Modi to do the same regarding clashes with China, which has not been the case. This has led many nationalists, as well as opposition parties in India, to bash Modi over the Ladakh fiasco. The only thing India did was to ban Chinese apps, which the Indian anchor Arnab Goswami proudly stated on Republic TV, which was utterly hilarious, laughable, and cringeworthy. Furthermore, there were calls to ban trade with China, which the Indian government didn't pay much heed to, as the Indian government knows it will only do harm to the Indian economy. The international community did not side with India, maybe because the world is busy in containing the COVID-19 outbreak, or because the world knows that India is no longer a secular state and has been modified into a Hindutva state under Prime Minister Modi. India, under Modi, is intoxicated by his strongman image and has embarked on a journey to change history, and now faces utter humiliation on the world stage. As when India was busy changing history, its neighbors changed its geography. One can expect fabricated stories, laughable analysis and hilarious reporting by Indian media, and false flag operations by the Indian government. We also have to take into account the reaction of the people of Kashmir and Ladakh. Following Galwan clash on 17th June, the Kashmiri population has left no stone unturned to mock the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the Chinese belligerence. Stone pelters in Srinagar used slogans such as Cheen Aaya to make fun of the Indian security forces. In the whole scenario, it will be logical to see how Pakistan reacted to the situation. As a matter of fact, there was no considerable response which came out from the Pakistani side, but as an ally state to China, it was obvious that Pakistan will show its support for China. It was evident in the statement of Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, where he said that China cannot remain ignorant towards India's illegal constructions of roads in Ladakh. He also warned about India's aggressive behavior towards its neighbors that could put regional peace and security at stake. Prime Minister of Pakistan also criticized the Modi regime and Hindutva ideology and expansionist policies of India. He stated that India's aggressiveness is a threat to India's neighbors. India has border disputes with Nepal, China, and Pakistan. Such continuous, arrogant behavior will not be tolerated. These statements from the senior leadership of Pakistan are an effort to awaken the international community to be vigilant about Indian actions. A strain in the relationship between New Delhi and Beijing was expected to take place, not only because of border issues, but also due to the broader opposing geopolitical interests. The BJP government put curbs on Chinese investments, an act Beijing called discriminatory. India's support for Tibet and its growing security and defense ties with the US Japan, and Australia have also caused quite some suspicion from Beijing. The conflict between India and China has initiated a new Cold War in the region. In the long term, India will be bent upon harming more of the Chinese economic interests. China's closer ties with Pakistan and Nepal have not pleased New Delhi either. Moreover, China's too big to fail Belt and Road project and its massive defense budget pose a serious geopolitical threat to India. China's defense budget at $261 billion is 3 times bigger than India's $71 billion. As for Pakistan, the Chinese move came as a blessing in disguise, as it proves the point that Kashmir is an international unsettled dispute as per UN resolutions. Ladakh is a part of Kashmir and thus regionally it is a trilateral issue among Pakistan, India and China, all three being nuclear powers, and thus this flashpoint has to be addressed on priority by the UN Security Council. Understandably, due to its evolving ties with China and rivalry with India, Pakistan has been viewing the Ladakh standoff through a Chinese lens. The episode has gained substantial space in mainstream Pakistani media. Ever since the deadly standoff between China and India, Pakistan has been trying to cash in on the situation. From diplomatic maneuvering behind the scenes to publicly bashing India for the overall developments surrounding Ladakh, Pakistan has stood on the side of China. Even though the extent of China's moves along the border remain fuzzy, it's clear that Beijing is putting heavy military pressure on India and its territorial claim. For Islamabad, seen from the zero-sum perspective that often frames India-Pakistan relations, this is a good thing, and the Sino-Indian border clash is a chance to press the advantage on the Kashmir issue. Some analysts conclude that the conflict might lessen tensions along the line of control between India and Pakistan and provide breathing space to Kashmiris in Indian-occupied Kashmir. The skirmishes between these two don't match the ones between India and Pakistan, where civilian casualties happen more often than not. Strategic analysts raised the alarm that prevalent tensions between the nuclear-armed neighbors could turn into unintended full-blown military action. When soldiers from the two most populous countries in the world, who spend more than $300 billion on their militaries, have a standoff, it is a thing of concern to many. If the two countries face a showdown on the border issue, the entire Himalayan region and the Indian subcontinent will face instability. Thus, the ongoing tensions must be addressed in a serious manner. In a region with 3 nuclear states, war is not an option. Ideally, a dialogue between Pakistan, India and China can address thorny issues, redeveloping their relations and create the necessary grounds for peace and progress in the entire region. If one side doesn't blink soon, the consequences of this brewing nightmare will be disastrous for the people of this region. India is being encrusted with embarrassment at every level, and the best policy it has adopted to divert attention from all these issues is to take action against Pakistan, to win hearts of Hindu nation through anti-Pakistan policies and hide its failures. Keeping in view the nature of present Indian government, the Director General of ISPR stated that Indian aggression aimed towards Pakistan will be responded with full capacity and no one should have any doubts about this. We are ready to respond in any situation that India might create. Mainly, the concerns of Pakistan are to preserve its internal and external security and sovereignty, and the other to reserve its triumph in terms of CPAC as a party to Chinese Great Economic Project, and security of CPAC is the biggest concern of Pakistan and China. The illegitimate constructions by India are the biggest concern for China, especially because it's a security threat for China's road networks of Belt and Road Initiative and CPAC as well. China, India and Pakistan need to resolve this issue trilaterally by dialogue, as it is the need of the hour.